this company for the, are you from South Carolina?
I am.
Okay. So, I mean, if you stay in state, the finances are a little bit easier. Okay, we've got 2 medical schools. One is very well established, one in Charleston. The one in Columbia is a little newer. If you're from this part of the state, a lot of your stuff can be done in Greenville now. I mean, there's a whole bunch of infrastructure that's going on at the Greenville Hospital System for the USC Medical School. The medical schools in South Carolina are fairly cheap for in-state. They are incredibly expensive for out-of-state. And the reason why is because there are people that will, for the sake of getting into medical school, somebody in their family will pay. And for the medical school, if they got that kind of a differential, they've got to make money. They've got to stay afloat. They got to put the lights on there just like we, and the state's supporting them? Not so much anymore. I don't think the lottery money goes to our medical school. So, yeah, I would not, if you're going to apply, even if you're a hotshot and you've got all the credentials, I'd still stay with, I'd apply to South Carolina schools because they're going to be the best opportunity for you. Now, from there, from residency, you can spoke out easier.
How would you say MUSC compares to other schools across the nation?
Very competitive, very competitive. And, I think they're training, they're not training, bench researchers. They don't want I don't think they want Nobel Prize winners. They want to go out there and train doctors that can go train. But it is a very good medical school. I find doctors that come out of there to be well trained and excellent. USC is newer. Doesn't mean you can't get an education. It's just going to be a little bit more self-taught than one in Charleston. Charleston's been around for 200 years. So they've got their act together.
How often do you use the new technologies? How much does that come out? Like now it might be different types of cell markers or comparative genomic stuff or.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's an interesting question because I'm a tweener. Okay, there are some guys that are in their 60s now that really never had to deal with computers and all that stuff. I mean, they deal with it in their day-to-day activities to a certain extent, but everything we do now is a computer. Electronic medical records, and there's nothing paper in my office now. It's all electronic medical records. And so to go from something where I've got this in front of me, and I still have a hard time reading journal articles on a computer screen, I need to have something here. It's just, but you guys aren't like that. But the question you really ask is that whenever I get a tumor, even the simplest tumor, there's just so many more questions I can ask of that tumor, specifically to that tumor, that can tell me how better to treat it. So we have, DNA expressions. In fact, if there's a breast cancer that you have, and it's a specific type of breast cancer that's estrogen receptor positive, there's a test that you can do now that's got 21 genes, either amplified or repressed, proteomics, that whole thing that can tell me whether or not that patient would benefit from the addition of chemotherapy to hormonal therapy. So yeah, there's just a lot of things that you have to stay well, and a lot of it is based on what is wrong with this cell, what is making it not die. And speaking of immortality, that's what a cancer cell is. I mean, it doesn't go through the normal programmed death that cells go through. It's called apoptosis. They're non-apoptotic cells. So they don't die, and they periodically divide. And so what is it that turns the cell on, and how can you turn it off? And for each cell, it's different. There's just incredible numbers of pathways, all these cartoons that come in and all these different pathways. But there's not all of them are that important. Some of them are duplicative, and so it's a way of saying, okay, if this key fits this ignition switch, okay, and if you put it in there, the cell gets turned on. But if you can clip between the ignition switch and the engine, the nucleus, you can stop that cell from doing its thing. So I think that's why oncology is But again, if you're interested in oncology, that's a good question. But I also want to make sure that you know the nuts and bolts of what you're doing from the standpoint. I'm sure you've got advisors. They're telling you what you need to take. From the standpoint of getting in, I just want to emphasize the fact that you need to stay, at least, even if you're shooting high, and some of you probably can, stay within the state from the standpoint of making, just have your safety valve there.
How important would you say research is, especially if you're considering oncology? I feel like that's an ever-changing field right now, the undergraduate research.
Well, it depends on what you want to do. There are people that want to stay within the academic environment. Okay, so if you go to a research medical center where they're putting out a lot of articles and a lot of research, then you're going to want to have some experience, some time in a lab. Okay. That's really not me, but it is something that if you're going to make a difference and kind of go up the academic track, assistant, associate professor, tenured professor, people that are going up the track in Clemson. I mean, since we don't have a medical school here, it's it may not, but it's still that way in the medical centers. So if that's what interests you, that's fine. One of the things that we do, and we do a lot of, and I'm the principal investigator for what we call a Community Clinical Oncology Program, a CCOP. So National Cancer Institute funds these cooperative groups. And via this mechanism, this started about 23 years ago. And it used to be that all the clinical research for cancer was done at the big centers. So most of the patients were being taken care of in the community. So to actually get this research to translate to where the patients were being seen, they needed to develop this program. So there's 50 CCOPs around the nation. And they're funded by the National Cancer Institute. So we get granted about $1.8 million per year to pay for my salary. No. To pay for the nurses and the data and all these people that are taking care of these patients and put these patients in study. So we put, within this upstate, and Seneca's within this practice, we put about 190 patients on clinical trials. Some of these are trials that look at, okay, if I've got this gastric tumor and this is the way we used to take care of it, but there's this new drug, and what's going to happen if we add this new drug here? So that's clinical research that's therapeutic. But we're also looking at different supportive care mechanisms, whereby we're looking at immunology medicine to see whether or not that does better. Or we're looking at, some of the studies, we talk about genomics and getting down to the data, but there's been 2 studies in colon cancer and breast cancer where patients had their operation, and yet there's still this risk that they've got microscopic disease. They get chemotherapy. Half the people go on this exercise program after they get chemotherapy. Half the people don't. In both colon cancer and breast cancer, New England Journal of Medicine, which is the Bible when it comes to getting your research published, both published in New England Journal of Medicine, there was a significant survival advantage based on whether they got exercise. Now we're incorporating exercise right from the time they can go after the operation. So while they're doing it. So there's stuff that, you don't know exactly what makes sense, but it happens. So there's lots of things that we're doing that make more sense to me. We're talking to the patient about, we've got this conventional option. This is what the data says. But we also have investigational options. And most of the websites where the patient is being advised as to how to get the most information from their appointment with their oncologist in the 45 minutes that he or she has, will ask you to say, is there a clinical trial done? So, because for me, that's the best medicine. Not because we're doing stuff that's new and potentially innovative, but it's also incorporates now another member into the team, and that's the research nurse. And the research nurse is going to follow these people and make sure that we're following the rules and protocol, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. And so, having clinical research available and doing it right and making sure the data is right and making sure that you're looking for any unexpected side effects and reporting those, that's extremely important. And so that's something we're doing as well.
How long is it before stuff like that goes into common widespread use?
For clinical practice, some studies honestly, in order to be statistically to the point where they can actually answer the question, they need thousands of cases. And some studies just die. You can't sell it. You can't. I had a guy that said, I don't want to be a used car salesman here, but I just want to let you know that we have this study and it's this, that. And as he's leaving, he said, Doc, just want to let you know, I am a used car salesman. So, no, from the standpoint of a small study, a study that's looking at a potential for supportive care, how a patient gets through the therapy a little bit better. These are short studies. They have a short endpoint, and they can be brought out to practice in 2 years. Usually the pharmaceutical studies, there have to be enough events. I mean, if you're dealing with a therapy where most of the people are going to survive, and so there's less events of recurrence that are going on, you know, in those circumstances, it may take 10 years to actually have it implemented.
Reports recommended by different powers that be, widespread. Says, specific treatment for whatever type.
Right.
Does that get frustrating sometimes?
Well, what gets
If you
frustrated
just have
is that
something
you have something that is the new thing is there's a specific type of breast cancer called triple negative. So they're estrogen receptor negative, progesterone receptor negative, and they're HER2 negative, and it's a very poor prognosis. And you know, in those circumstances, there's a new medicine called a PARP inhibitor, and this was presented at the American Society of Clinical Oncology in June of 2009. And it was set out there as something that was going to be available, you know, soon. And here it is almost a year later, and you don't have any access to it at all. So that gets frustrating. You know, when you have something that has really been shown to be beneficial and work, and for it to be something, I did get a patient from Seneca up to the National Cancer Institute to participate in the trial. But it's still a very slow process, and the FDA, for better or for worse, the Food and Drug Administration, they put stops on things, you know, to protect us from these drugs, from the potential side effects of these drugs. And yet, you know, as much as they want to protect us, there's also people that potentially would benefit from these drugs that just don't get them, and you know, they suffer the ultimate consequence because of that. So the expectations of your patients, you know, drawn out by the internet and television and the you know, sometimes the sensationalism of the fact that, and of course there's lots of misinformation out there as well that you have to decipher. You know, those things become very frustrating because you're looking at somebody who's desperate for some type of therapy, whether it be something that's realistic or not. I mean, there's some people that are desperate for, and obviously, if you go into oncology, you're going to have some patients that are going to fly off to places for whoever's selling the best cure rates, whether or not there's data for these people or not. There's lots of craziness. I mean, desperate people will do desperate measures. And so there's some frustration that goes along with the emotions of this process, like we were talking about. But yeah, it is hard to know that there's something that's potentially beneficial to your patient, and to not be able to access that. I've been taking care of my next door neighbor in Greenville since 1993, and she has metastatic breast cancer. She was 40 when she first started this process. She'd been through a bone marrow transplant, everything, and you know, we're kind of running out of options for her. You know, but there are still some options, and it's just been very frustrating